Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another instance of Test of Time, and on the spotlight we have the Mark of Zorro. Directed by Ruben Mamoulian, with Tyrone Power as the suave Don Diego de la Vega and his alter ego Zorro, Linda Darnwell as Lolita Quintero, Diego's love interest, Basil Rathbone as the nefarious Captain Esteban Pasquale, and J. Edward Bromberg as the greedy Don Luis Quintero. This version of the caped and masked caballiero is said to be so good that it influenced the whole masked hero genre, including Batman. But is it that good? Compared to modern movies, Ruben Mamoulian's directional style will look rather plain, but I'd say that it's solid and functional. Here, he displays an interest in long tracking shots. There aren't many close-ups, with the preference being a good framing of a whole group that is talking. There are some moments where one can see an inspiration from the adventures of Robin Hood, with shadows being used expertly, or differ, but the overall tone and style will be a bit more placid. Yes, placid for a Zorro movie. Still, this directing allows everyone to see clearly what's going on and where everyone is. There aren't many locales to visit. Most of the movie develops inside the Quintero's hacienda and its related locales, such as the church and the closest woods. The second most visited spot will be the hacienda of the Vega, and some scenes happen in other locales such as the town's church, the town itself, or nearby areas. Nonetheless, the sets express well the disparity between the characters' wealth, with scenes in the Quintero hacienda having backgrounds full of adornments, the church of Fray Felipe having barely anything on its walls, the dirty dilapidated town and its tabernas, and so on. Costumes follow suit, and by Raul Julia's moustache, even if this movie is black and white, you can see a clear idea of how colorful and gilded were the outfits. This movie is very well illuminated, and the camera allows the viewers to bask upon the gorgeously embroidered suits used by the dons or the absolutely stunning dresses worn by the ladies, while at the same time keeping things realistic, with poverty and status also expressed in what each person wears. Even for the time, it was a feast to the eyes without going overboard. Now for the writing. Based on the 1990 novel The Curse of Capistrano, written by Johnston McCulley, the Mark of Zorro is actually a remake of an earlier silent movie starring Douglas Fairbanks. Fun fact, the Zorro of the books wore a poncho, a sombrero, and a full face mask, and his weapons of choice were a cavalry sword and a pistol. The Fairbanks adaptation changed it for the mask and sword we all know, and the Tyrant Power Zorro started wearing black. And by now, the story of this character is well known. It's 1820s and Don Diego de la Vega leads a good life in Spain before receiving a letter from his father asking him to return to California, which was still a Spanish domain at the time, only to find his hometown consumed by the corruption and the oppression of the elites. Specific details vary between iterations, but nonetheless he fights the oppression by leading a double life between the foppish and lazy Don Diego and donning the mask of Zorro. In this version, Diego's father was the kind and good-hearted alcaide before being deposed by the villainous Don Luis Quintero and his underling Captain Esteban Pasquale. So, what's the difference between this Zorro and all the others? Well, for starters, the fact that this movie actually bothers to establish Don Diego and show how he becomes Zorro, unlike literally every single adaptation I've seen, where we already start with his persona established. Here we are shown, not told, how he is such a good swordsman and a rider, having been trained by Fray Felipe and the military before being called back, and him interacting with the misery that is found in his old home. This is all neatly done in approximately 20 minutes of the movie. Sure, it could have been done in less time, 10 minutes more or less, but that would erode the base to our second difference and what makes this movie so good: the characterization. Another and the biggest difference between this movie and all the others is the amount of care to properly establish the scenario and the different characters. They are still rather simple. You have the greedy bad guy, the killer Mook, but rather than just throw them at the viewer as is, the story presents and fleshes out each one of the characters that Don Diego will have to deal with, even if they aren't properly deep. This will be more for the acting, So for now, let's just move ahead and tackle the biggest lie still related to the characterization. This isn't a Zorro movie, this is a Don Diego movie. The breakout point is that the vast majority of the movies about Zorro, Don Diego is the side character in his own tale, barely showing up. But here, he is the center stage and Zorro is his tool. Generally, we see the big bad having a nefarious, convoluted plan that Zorro must thwart, but in this movie, the plan already worked, the bad guys already seized the town, and Don Diego must methodically dismantle everything from within. And so he uses both sides of his coin in his favor. As Don Diego, he enters Quintero's domain in order to learn about his foes and manipulate them, and as Zorro, he acts where Don Diego cannot, with violence and impunity. And unsurprising considering the time, this Zorro isn't even remotely afraid of killing and can be in fact quite cruel. Thus, to have a credible action, the movie established tenderly that Diego is really smart and a coy manipulator, and holy motherfucking Jesus on a flaming tricycle, if this motherfucker was any smoother, he'd be frictionless. The dialogue is accordingly insanely sharp, and this is where things twist and turn interestingly. While the side characters are simple, they aren't stupid, or else Don Diego's victory would be boring. Pasquale and Quintero shows through their interactions why they need each other and why Zorro can't just kill Quintero. They don't know who Zorro is, but they don't stay still, counter-scheming, which forces Diego to quickly adapt, resulting in an interesting tug-of-war. Everything is well established and, pretty much like Robin Hood, everyone can be smart in their own way. While not as influential to the plot like Maid Marian from Robin Hood, Lolita Quintero is also really sharp and quick to adapt in order to properly help Zorro. Their romance is more akin to love at first sight, but their scenes together were so iconic that they were replicated in the Mask of Zorro. So, needless to say, characterization is absurdly solid. If there was a problem with this movie, while I can understand how things led to it, the end of the movie feels like throwing a lot of what they established into the bin, which may up souring some folks. But any more is for the spoiler section. Because now I have to talk about the acting. If you have a movie centered on the characters, you need a holy matrimony between really freaking good actors and insanely good directing akin to cheese and pizza. And this movie fucking delivers it with spades and extra mozzarella sticks on the side. I haven't seen any of Mamoulian's older movies, but from what I got from Mask of Zorro is that he is insanely good with show don't tell, my favorite kind of storytelling tool, using both practical and symbolic scenes to expose to the viewer the relationships in the Quintero's hacienda. And believe me, there's a lot of show don't tell. For example, it's one thing to have side characters telling how greedy Quintero is, and another thing entirely different is having this scene. And this is another lost art nowadays, but Mamoulian takes care to show characters, especially Diego, reaching their own conclusions, and it's downright amazing to see in action. For example, Diego reaches his old house, meets the Captain Pasquale, and you can see the very moment where he realizes that, in order to not paint himself as a target for the captain, he must play a foppish dandy.
I am Diego Vega, son of His Excellency Don Alejandro.
We take care of the government.
I see. I see. Tell me, who holds the office now?
Don Luis Basilio Quintero. I'll take you to him.
Oh, thank you, but I should like to see my family as quickly as possible. Where are they living?
At your old hacienda. But His Excellency will never forgive me if I let you go without a word of welcome from him. I'm quite sure that you'll save me a reprimand.
How could I refuse a man anything with a naked sword in his hand?
And to get this sort of effect as a director, you need a really good control over timing, framing, the build-up, and a really fringy good actor. And Tyrone Power absolutely delivers it. His mastery of the character is such that he can twist and turn the intricacies and multiple personalities of Don Diego like a dial. To Quintero, he is a rich friend to the family. To Inez, Quintero's wife, He's a potential lover that will take her away to Spain. To Captain Pasquale, he is Inés' bothersome gay friend. And Tyrone seamlessly transitions between these subtle different roles superbly. Needless to say, when he turns into Zorro, he lets his hatred loose. He is, of course, followed by an equally strong cast. When I mentioned that Basil Rathbone could be as energetic as Errol Flynn, this was one of the movies I had in mind, the other being Captain Blood. Here he plays very well Pasquale, a vicious and sadistic foe, but who is frustrated with the knowledge that he doesn't have the brains and the reach to control a whole domain, and thus he needs the coward Quintero. Speaking of, Edward Bromberg also jumps between the comedic cowardice and the creepy greediness really well. I could stay all day talking about the side cast. Oh hey, it's Friar Tuck, as Friar Philippe, and they both kick ass. Speaking of ass kicking, this may be a tad frustrating for some people, but this is also one of the Zorro movies with the least amount of action. While still good, and while the last showdown between Zorro and Pasquale is really good, it also doesn't reach the level of Curtis movies such as Robin Hood. Nonetheless, the pacing in this movie is good. It's not brisk, but it balances well the long periods of talking with intense action scenes akin to a roller coaster. For the soundtrack, after such a thick reveal, thankfully this section will be quite light. The soundtrack for this movie was made by Alfred Newman, and it's quite good. Nothing bombastic or memorable, but it fits well the characters and the action like a glove. One noteworthy aspect is that the movie doesn't use that much of a soundtrack, knowing to balance the silence of the dialogues with the tender musical spotlight scenes before bursting into heroic action. Yep, no wonder that the modern Batman interpretation took a lot from this Zorro, and honestly I wish they took more from it. This is the smartest, sharpest and most charismatic Don Diego I've ever seen. It actually makes me imagine what would be a Batman movie more focused on Bruce Wayne instead of Batman. The closest thing I can think of are the Mask of the Phantasm and the Tim Burton movies, but returning to Zorro, yeah, no wonder people think that this is the best Zorro movie, and I'm inclined to agree. It's not as enduring as Adventures of Robin Hood due to the lack of colors and the lack of action, but it more than makes up for it with the sheer characterization and a solid story backed by a superb cast. And the sheer degree of show don't tell is something that it has to be seen to be believed. This is a must-watch movie for both Zorro fans, Batman fans, and fans of adventure movies in general. So for the spoilers, the main beef is that Quintero used Pasquale's forces to remove Alejandro from power. Alejandro, Diego's father, was the previous alcalde. He is good-hearted, but too reliant on the law to properly move. Diego plans to turn Quintero's family against him and force him to go back to Spain, putting his father back in power. Because if he just kills Quintero, Spain will send someone else, or worse, Pasquale will put someone else. Pasquale needs Quintero because he is the perfect pawn, too cowardly to fight back, but skilled enough to keep the region under his domain. So all Pasquale has to do is to keep the status quo and he can enjoy a lot of money and Quintero's wife. Quintero knows he is crucial to Pasquale and that the captain's forces will keep the peons in line. So as the movie goes, Diego terrorizes Quintero, except that he underestimates how intimidating Pasquale is, and when he realizes that Quintero won't move while Pasquale is there, he just kills the captain. I love the simplicity. I'd prefer it was a duel between Pasquale and Zorro, not a duel between Pasquale and Diego, but the scene was still quite good. And I really like how Diego goes, "Hey, I may have to kill your uncle, is that okay?" to Lolita, which she does agree. Her uncle is evil and needs to go. Now, the fun thing is that Quintero cleverly puts together that Diego is Zorro through actual clues and arrests the youth. On one hand, this shoots Diego's plans and the whole movie down. But on the other, seeing a villain being clever is insanely rare, which is a treat. So Diego gets out of jail, rallies his father and the caballeros and the peasants, and wins the day, as Diego, not as Zorro, which is an interesting subversion. That's all for today. Thank you very much. See you all next time, and remember to like and subscribe.